Okay, so this is 2.5 days or about 60 hours after my low back tweak at the commercial gym. And after the first day where I was trying to evaluate the situation, I experienced a good development in the sense that most of the tightness in the low back has kind of disappeared. I am noticing still that rotational movements of my spine towards the right and the left are still giving me a sensation of instability, or at least there is a bit of a tenderness in the area. But moving my torso to the side and even bending forward, so anything that involves the the hips hinging or even a little bit of lumbar flexion isn't really giving me the kind of alarm signals that I was getting right after I got this tweak. I can call it injury because it kind of got me scared a bit. But as the time progresses, I'm noticing that I am able to basically return to almost the same as I was before the occurrence. So I decided to not really take any extra time off and get into the exercises that I knew were not going to be affected anyways, as I started off with weighted dips, and I was super set in that with some more shoulder stuff. So none of that stuff was going to be influenced by anything in the low back. If anything, maybe the bracing on the weighted dips was probably a cause of concern for me, and I did feel a bit of tightness in there, mainly because, as I was saying in the past, when I was talking about my piriformis, which is irritated, and it has been for many months now, sometimes I get a few flare-ups when I am bracing the core in a situation of my feet not being on the floor, on the ground. So when my legs are dangling and I am trying to achieve some full body rigidity, then I do feel a bit of that in the left side of my hip, where the piriformis was inflamed. This has not really caused me anything of the sort on the right side, even though when I was testing hanging from the bar on the previous evening, I could feel that decompression was not giving me a pleasurable sensation. That's also why I thought about ruling out a disc issue, because usually the compression is what causes the problem, and releasing some of that is giving a good sensation, which is not what I was feeling. I was feeling a bit of tightness, so probably the muscles around that area were still a bit alarmed of what had just happened. And then I was moving into handstands, which were another thing that I wasn't really sure about. If my low back was a bit weak, then maybe risking getting into some hyperextension. Sometimes I get a bit of a banana handstand going on, so I wasn't really sure about that, but I did those against the wall and they were feeling okay. And then lastly, I went into some single leg squats. This I was also not sure about, because I was going to be getting into some pretty big degrees of hip flexion with a bit of possible spinal engagement, the low back, as I am holding onto the dumbbells. But after doing them unloaded with just my body weight, I was happy to see that I was getting into all of those ranges of motion without any discomfort whatsoever. And so I was able to actually push some weight onto that. So in the end, it was basically a normal session. So I'm very grateful for that. And I will still be careful and on the lookout for movements that more heavily load the low back in the days to come, especially when I'm going into stuff like squats, back extension, and stuff like that. Ciao.